Welcome to my first podcast on Your Vote Doesn't Matter Anyways. This is going to be a little bit different than most things that you hear on the internet today. I know there's a lot of different things vying for your attention. There's a lot of topics that people like to talk about. But today I want to talk about why I don't think your vote matters anyways. I know there's a big slogan going out there from the president in 2019. It's called "Let's Make America Great Again." And then his re-election campaign's talking about "Let's Keep America Great." Let's go back and talk about America for a moment. I'm a 62-year-old male. My mother migrated to the United States of America back in 1950. She's from Greece. My mother actually came to this country because of my father, who was a World War II military veteran who met my mom at the very tail end of World War II. Fell in love with her, decided to bring her back to this country. So if I have to go through my history here, my mother's Greek. Her father was born in Greece. Mother was born in Greece. Many generations there, but my mom came to this country as a 19-year-old. My father, let's go back to his father, my grandfather, came to America in the late 1890s as a young child, one of 4 kids, whose father migrated to America under the promise of being a landowner. At the end of the Civil War, as America progressed westward, land grants were available for those immigrants that wanted to come to this country, settle the land, and have a chance to live a better life. America to me has always been about one thing. I know we can talk about religion, freedom of religion, what made America, what brought people here in the beginning, but I want to talk about America in terms of 2 things, the haves and the have-nots. If you lived in Europe for the last 500 years, opportunities were very limited. There was a feudal system going on. We had kings and queens. And at the end, you were either born into money or you had to have money to get ahead. America promised a new opportunity where you can come in here to this country, have a chance to settle some land, have a chance to grow your own crops, or maybe become trade merchants, go out and find a way to make a living for yourself. There was not a guarantee when you came to this country. The Statue of Liberty did not have a big sign on top of it that said, come here, get free Medicare, come here, get free food stamps, come here, get anything for free. The free social programs of this country never started until about 1938 by Franklin D. Roosevelt. No one came to this country with anything and a promise of anything other than your own sweat, your own brow, what you can put together on your own. That was what America was. So I want to talk to you about the haves and the have-nots, because essentially happiness in this country really is about having a little bit of something. If I had to be a miserable person, would I rather be miserable and broke, or would I rather be miserable and have a lot of money in my pocket? You understand what I'm talking about here. Money is the grease on the wheel. It makes things a little bit easier. America was a great place. Let's just go back. I'm not going to give you a really in-depth history lesson, but let me tell you why I believe your vote doesn't matter anymore. Back in 1950s, what was unique about the United States of America is that we had gone through a major war. Europe as well as the Pacific Theater. Europe was a parking lot. Germany was leveled. Many of the countries surrounding Germany were leveled. There wasn't a lot of building or manufacturing going on. Russia, who was our ally during World War II, they came in at the end and disassembled any factory that was left in Germany and imprisoned, or basically put into work labor, 2 million Germans, and brought a lot of the manufacturing facilities to Russia at the end of World War II. Russia suffered immensely. America, we lost about 250,000 Americans during World War II. Great sacrifice. I'm talking about Europe, not the Pacific Theater now. I'm talking about our war against Germany. At the end of the war, Germany lost approximately 2.5 million men, and also close to 1 million, 1.5 million civilians. I bring this up to you because I want you to understand that Russia during World War II lost about 10 million military soldiers and another 10 million civilians at the end of the war. Europe was in devastation. At the end, Joseph Stalin took control of Russia, and he killed approximately another 20 million people that didn't agree with his political stand about communism. And through a lot of social programs that he tried to implement at the end of the war, another 75 to 100 million people starved to death because of this command economy. Today there's a lot of people in this country who say it's time for socialism. The Social Democrats, let's just use these progressives, they have no clue, no idea of how devastating these programs have been to the rest of the world. But I understand why they're bringing that voice to America today, because what's here today, what is actually changing in America, has left a lot of people with nothing. The haves and the have-nots, the separation between the two is greater today than it was 30 to 40 years ago for a variety of reasons. Look, let me just give you a quick history lesson on why I think things have changed so dramatically. America was in the heyday of manufacturing back in the 50s. We did not lose any manufacturing facilities during the war, contrary to Europe. We had a big head start on the rest of the global community. We made a lot of things. You know, what really changed dramatically was the automobile that started to become an integral part of our lives in the 40s and 50s. The president at the time in 1955 was Dwight D. Eisenhower, war hero, 5-star general. He signed the Interstate Highway Act in 1955, which basically put 55,000 miles of interstate highway in this country. That transformed the way we were living. All of a sudden, we could travel state to state. Most importantly, we could travel to cities, we could travel into suburbs. And what started to change was America. We started to become consumers. Haves and have-nots. How much do you need to be happy? Well, I used to use this term. It's called just enough rich. Just enough rich means you own a home, modest as it may be. You own a car. You have a little bit of money in your bank account where you can go out and enjoy yourself, take a nice trip or a nice vacation every year, have a little money to set aside for your children. My generation, I'm a baby boomer at the tail end. I was born in 57. Baby boomers were born approximately from 1945 to 1960. It was the dream of our parents, who most of us did not have parents with a college education. It was a dream of our parents to be able to send our kids to school, or their kids to school, and be able to have a better life. My generation, things have changed because the kids of my generation, let's just call them the millennials, they're really the first generation who's not supposed to do as well as their parents did. That was a change. Every time America through the 1900s, every parent always hoped for a better life for their kids, and most of the time helped obtain that better life for their children. But in our generation today, we have skyrocketing educational costs. Kids are graduating college today with debt, with loans that equal a mortgage payment. And what's happening today is that healthcare, I know we talk about making healthcare accessible. Accessible doesn't mean affordable. You got people out there spending thousands of dollars a month in healthcare costs. That was not the way it was 30 and 40 years ago by any stretch. Education, I went to a major university, well, major state university, Penn State University. Out-of-state tuition at the time was approximately $3,000 a year. It's tenfold higher than that today, if not more. College today is not college as far as affordability level than it was 35, 40 years ago. And if all things being equal hold true, college for the kids 20 to 25 years from today, if it's not 30, 40K a year, it's going to be 100, 150K a year. Because all things being equal, that's how things are going. The cost of education is rapidly rising. The cost of healthcare is rapidly rising. So let's just talk about 1955, 1956. The highways were starting to build. America became more mobile. Factories started producing. It was a great time to be blue collar in this country because without a college education, you could secure yourself a good manufacturing job for the most part. I want you to realize that in 2001, China became part of the World Trade Organization. And all of a sudden, manufacturing jobs that used to be very plentiful on the shores of America started leaving here and going overseas. Why? Well, there's probably the most important reason. It's called economics. 7.5 billion people on the planet. 1 out of every 3 people on the planet make under $1 a day. Another third make between $1 and $2 a day, and then you got the rest of the world. China was a great place, and so is many places in the Far East today, where you can get manufacturing done for a song and dance. And many countries in South America today, they also are manufacturing options, where big money chases the low-cost labor. So what we have here in America is the evaporation, and yes, it's evaporating, the middle class. The chance to go out and work hard and focus your energies and be persistent and learn as much as you can about a given trade or a given business, work your butt off and have a chance to get ahead. That opportunity is leaving the shores of America. And I'll tell you, one of the main reasons is because of manufacturing. For every manufacturing job that was held in this country, there were 6 or 7 other jobs that were created to support a manufacturing environment. People had to build the factories. People had to deliver goods. You needed plumbers. You needed an electrician. You needed machinists. You needed people on the assembly line to fix the assembly line when it became broken. Things are changing, though. Let me tell you, the biggest problem, or the biggest change, is what's called automation and robotics. I'll give you a quick story. Back in 2005, I went to a big factory, big steel plant. I had a friend of mine who spent 30 years in the steel making business. He invited me out to a big steel plant because a friend of his was a vice president at the steel mill. And when I went out there, I couldn't believe my eyes. 20,000 people working 3 shifts. I mean, it was just like going to a football stadium, for God's sake. It was amazing. But the minute I went in, the only thing he asked me is that I brought steel-tip shoes with me, and I did. He gave me a hard hat. We went in. 5 minutes there, I was ready to leave. It was scary. The amount of steel, the amount of hot metal inside of this plant being made, I was just in shock about what kind of work environment people worked in. But it was a large employer, 20,000 people. I got a hold of my friend 12, 13 years after I set foot in that plant and asked how things were out in that neck of the woods with the steel manufacturing process. Were these steel plants still in business? He goes, yeah. Matter of fact, the plant that you and I were in were actually outputting more steel than they were at the time that we were there 12, 14 years earlier. I said, wow, that's amazing. I thought America was, having their butt handed to them because China and a lot of other sources, India included, were making steel much, much cheaper. He goes, no, the output of that steel plant is still very, very high. The only thing that's changed is the amount of people that are needed. I said, what do you mean? Well, from 20,000 workers in that plant working 3 shifts, they're down to 2,000 workers. 1/10 of the manpower they originally had. 1/10 of the original manpower, and they're outputting more steel from that facility every year. That's what's not great about America. The land of opportunities changed immensely. There's less room in the middle. Either you got a lot or you got nothing. And the people in between, which I used to call just enough rich, they're going the way of the dodo bird. It's harder and harder and harder today to make a living and be just enough wealthy, where you own a home, have a car, have a few bucks in the bank. Today, it's the big box stores that have taken over. You've seen them, Walmart. I can talk hours about Walmart. Walmart found a way to bring low-cost goods to this country, and it had a tremendous following. This is before Amazon. Walmart was the largest retailer in the world, and at the time, what made them so immensely popular was that they can deliver a product. People would shop at Walmart because they saved money. Matter of fact, at one time, the average shopper at Walmart was saving about $2,000 a year shopping at Walmart. So, cost savings were important to people, especially when your wallet was being squeezed. You looked for to save money anywhere and any place that you could. The problem was Walmart became the start of jobs leaving this country. Walmart actually was the catalyst for big box stores that followed, like Home Depot, Lowe's, all these stores followed. Goods are made overseas now for cheap, very little. And they were sent over here into this country and sold out of big box stores, Walmart, Kmart, Sears, Kohl's, JCPenney. Many of these stores today are leaving because they're going out of business. There is a lot of retailers in America in 2018-19 that are going under. But the one thing I want to emphasize to you about these big box stores is that they took away a lot of the manufacturing jobs in this country and left us with nothing more than a great distribution plan that paid very low wages. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was not uncommon to work in a manufacturing job as a laborer with a high school degree, high school diploma, and make 40, 50K a year. Yes, that was 30 to 40 years ago. People were making 40 and 50K. There are more bald eagles flying around downtown major cities than there are people in blue-collar jobs making 50, 60K. And what's left of them? Transportation, truckers, the last mile jobs, UPS. They're going away because automation, G5 technology is finally here as far as cellular technology. And now they're going to automate the delivery side of retail. You're talking about Amazon that bought Whole Foods so they can get into the grocery business. That was just a hub start for them. They're looking to automate grocery delivery to the point where you're going to be using automated delivery vehicles coming to your door, dropping off your groceries. Walmart's already doing it out west. Walmart now has a program where they have a driverless car show up at your house, pick you up, take you to Walmart, where the groceries will be loaded into your car, you pay for them, and the car will take you back home. All that is part of what's called the driverless society that's coming our way. It's here. It's already started. Uber bought 17,000 driverless cars from Volvo last year. Even the ride-sharing business is becoming automated. So, what am I trying to do? Claim doom and gloom? No, I'm just trying to get us to all understand the transition that's happening in our country. Back in 1955, okay, Dwight D. Eisenhower approved the Interstate Highway Act. Roads became abundant. It was a great time to be in America. And then, what was the new phenomenon? Okay, the town meeting place started to take a new dimension, or a different, let's just say, transformation into what was called the malls. Between 1955 and 2005, roughly 1,500 malls were built in America. Some of them extremely large, 500, 800 stores, mega malls. They became a place where people like to hang out. Kids like to go there after school. Kids like to go there on weekends. Kids like to go to the movies there. Kids like to hang out in the food courts there. There has not been a new mall built in this country since 2007. One new mall, indoor mall, was built in 2007. 5 were built in 2006. And there hasn't been any new malls since then. They say in the next 10 years, half of those malls will be closed down. Half of them, because retailing has changed immensely. And before you think that retail and malls are gone, I want you to think again. In this country, they're gone. But in other parts of the world, they're thriving like crazy. When you go out to the Far East, when you go out to Dubai, they're building so many malls there for ultra wealthy citizens who have the dollars, the discretionary dollars, to buy really, really nice Versace, Gucci, very nice goods. The mall and the mall environment is thriving out there. London, the Blue Mall, a mega mall, thriving like crazy. Malls aren't dead around the world. They're just dead in America. And one of the main reasons why they're dead in America is because the middle class in America is going bye-bye. The world, the way we see it today, and the way of the, let's say, the past 50 years, we're putting that on the shelf. That world is changing. As much as they try to sell you on the idea that America is going to get great again, think again. It's not. Technology has transformed the world and the businesses that we're living. in the world that many of us participated in. I'm not talking about becoming ultra wealthy, millions and millions, but I'm talking about making a good living where you can count on having enough paycheck where at the end of the month you had money left over where you can still go out and do some things, buy a couple nice items, have a good life for yourself and your family instead of struggling paycheck to paycheck, having two jobs. And let's talk about jobs in this country. 30 hours a week now becomes the norm. They're talking about temporary workers or part-time workers. That's because it's cheaper for big box store businesses to make your hours available when they need you the most. How in the world do you actually have a decent life when you don't even have the same set hours every week? How do you share the same vehicle with your spouse if you don't have a schedule? How do you participate with your children's lives when you don't have a set schedule? Who picks them up? Who takes them to practice? What kind of life is this that we're starting to develop in this country when we don't even have control of our own time because we serve the big box store? Home Depot, I got one around the corner from me. Every time I go in there, I want to throw up in my mouth because I'm disgusted when I see a store like that. And how many stores used to be in this country that Home Depot has replaced? The plumbing, the painting, the lawn care. I mean, I can go on and on about all the departments inside of Home Depot. And I'm not just picking on Home Depot. But the fact is, we worship these big stores because they save us a few bucks, but they've taken the middle class. They sliced and diced it out of our world. Because in the days that I graduated college, 1979, the paradigm of America business was manufacturing. Once you manufactured something, you basically moved it into the market through a wholesaler. Once a wholesaler got their hands on the product, they marketed it out to retailers. The markup model, the paradigm, worked something like this. If your manufacturing cost was $100, if the manufacturer needed to sell something for $100, they sold it to the wholesaler, who sold it for $130 to $140. He made a 30 to 40, or she made a 30 to 40% markup on all manufactured goods. You made it for $100. You sold it for $130 to the wholesaler. The wholesaler then sold it to the wholesaler for $100. The wholesaler made a 30% markup, selling it to the retailer. The retailer bought it for $130 or $140 and sold it for double. It was called keystoning. He sold it for $260, $280 because he, at the end of the day, had the largest overhead. He needed physical location. He put the ads in the paper. He put the ads on the radio. He put the ads on television. He did the print media that drew people to his business. So he needed to have the largest markup on the goods. But what you had there at the end of the day was a system of manufacturing, wholesaling, distribution that led to retail and customers coming in, and the malls were prolific. Back in the 1980s and 90s, mall life was it. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a lot of small town America out there, a lot of Main Street America, which had 30, 40, 50 stores, hardworking guys, shoe shops, hair cutteries, people out there with small paint stores, people with small hardware stores. And America was served by these people. They were really blue-collar, middle-class, in-between Americans. They weren't poor, they weren't rich, they were just enough rich. This is what's really changed about our country. There was the guy that would go out and work, or the gal that would go out and work 50, 60-hour weeks. They worked hard. Instead of being a lieutenant on a big battleship, they chose to be a captain of their own little rowboat. And they loved life because they were in control of their own life. They may not be filthy rich, but at the end of the day, they called their own shots and put money in their pocket. Instead of working for $10, $12, $15 an hour, they may have been taking that kind of money home every week, but at the end of the year, after really busting their butt and doing a good job being service-oriented in their business and being smart about what they did, they wound up having maybe a year where they made $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 profit. That was the bonus of being in business for yourself. When a man can take home an extra 30 to 40 grand, that's a game changer. I know it doesn't buy you $1.5 million home, but when you have a $30,000, $40,000 bonus hitting you at the end of the year, and I'm not saying they had to take it at the end of the year, they could take it in higher wages as the year progressed. But my point was an extra 30 to 40K did a lot of things to a person's ability to be mobile and upward. They didn't have to necessarily go out and buy Mercedes and a BMW, but you know what? They got a little thing in their life that they maybe didn't have last year. Maybe a pool table. Maybe it was a hot tub in their backyard. Maybe they went out and bought a house with a little bigger yard. Maybe they helped take care of their grandkids' private education. Maybe their daughter had 2 children. She didn't have quite enough money, but granddad, who had his own business, could help pay the tuition for the private school for their grandchild. That's what made America different and great, is that people could go to work, bust their butt, and get ahead. And all that's been stripped out by all these big stores out there. And I don't even want to start about the one that I really believe has changed this world immensely for the worse. The Antichrist, Amazon. Yeah, do I shop there? Yes. Have I bought things from Amazon? Yes. But if you ever see how they really decimated middle America in this country, then you'd agree with me that they've been the worst thing to happen to this country. Oh, but wait a minute, they saved me a few dollars as they strip all the real good jobs out of this country, as they strip out all the people that used to own their little stores. Now, the big thing is, why deal with the middleman? Why deal with the wholesalers or the high-cost retailers? We'll sell it directly to you at a lower cost. Well, I'm just telling you, the hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs or business opportunities evaporated once the internet came here. And I don't mean that the internet is all bad. I know there's a double-edged sword to everything. There's a plus and minus to everything that you do. But just think about the retail model that dissolved over the last 30 years in this country. Manufacturing to wholesale to retail, and all the small businesses, all the people that had 9, 10, 12 employees that cared, that had real Christmas parties, real celebrations, really cared about people to a degree, used to sponsor the Little League teams in their neighborhood, in their community, used to give to the Girl Scouts, used to do things that contribute back to their economy. Well, back in the 80s, there was a guy named Ronald Reagan. And boy, when you say that name, some people really stand up and salute, and some people want to basically throw up. But the one thing I'll tell you about the world back then that was different than the stinking online world that we live in today. And I'm sorry if I'm offending you. If you live and work in the online world, I'm just telling you, I'll tell you what really changed America. The online world changed us because back in the day, if you had money and you decided to open a business or open a manufacturing and put people to work, it was good for everybody. But what it was particularly good for was your community. And I'll tell you why. I opened up a pizza store, let's say. I opened a pizza shop. People came and bought my pizza. I did a good job. I made good pizza. I bought all my product locally. I went to the dairy. I bought my cheese. I bought my flour. I brought in local contractors to help get my store ready. I was an employer of 3 or 4 people in my community, and I did good in my community. And when I got my money, and let's say I ran a good business, my revenue exceeded my expenses, and I actually made a few bucks every week or a month. I took my money and I went across the street and I invested it into other small businesses near me. I went and got my hair cut with Joe the barber across the street. I gave money to my wife to have her nails done. I went across the street and I bought a small piece of furniture for my living room from the local furniture store there. I went around the corner and I went to the auto shop and I invested my money I made there in the community. Everyone prospered. That's what's called trickle-down economics. That's where money that you make goes back into your community and people prosper from that. But wait a minute, hold on. I bought something from Amazon today. Whoa, I just spent $100. Where did that money go? I don't know. It didn't go in my community. I can tell you that right now. It went all the way out to Seattle. Where did it go? It didn't come in my community. There's no trickle-down effect from money that's spent online. The people that are in in other parts of the country right now that are selling products all across the globe. The money that they get in their checkbook gets extracted from different parts of the globe or the country. And by the way, when you used to go to the local shoe shop and buy a pair of loafers for $100, you paid a state tax on that. So the local economy and the local government had something to do. They got some revenue from that. How many of you pay taxes on most of your Amazon purchases? The answer is very few of you. So that tax revenue is gone. But the trickle-down effect of money in your economy, that's what vacated. That's why smaller communities are being decimated. Business is changing. Not for the better. I wish I could tell you it was. But you got a bunch of people out there screaming in your ear that they're going to change everything because we're going to become a socialist nation. We can't even pay the bills we got. We owe over $20 trillion right now. And by the way, that's not a free lunch. We pay interest on that $20 trillion of debt. The federal government has to pay interest on that money that they've borrowed and that they've used, because for every year, every budget, let's say we bring in about $3 trillion in revenue to the federal budget from all sources, we spend over $4 trillion. That means every year we run a negative $1 trillion budget. How long would you last in your house if you exceeded your budget every single year by 20 to 25% of what you made? Once you got through your credit cards and maxed them out, you're done, because you can't go to them anymore and you still got to pay the interest big on all your credit cards. You're in a worse situation. You're in a dire situation. That's where we're heading. No one wants to tell you the truth. But we do pay interest on that money, and we have to pay it every year. Whether we get the money from the feds and they issue T-bills, that interest big is paid out. And the one reason you're wondering why banks aren't charging or giving you 6, 7, 8% interest on your money, they're not giving you 5%. I mean, I went to my bank the other day, and they're talking about giving me a 0.1% on my money in the bank. I'd rather burn it underneath my mattress than to give it to them and allow them to give me 1/10 of 1% or 1%. The reason why banks will never give you 5%, because very simple. If the T-bill, all rates are set. If our prime central banks are raising the interest rates, we got to pay 5% interest on our debt, and that would bury us. It would bury us, because on our $20 trillion right now, we're spending in the neighborhood of around $275 billion a year in interest. Double it, 500. Triple it, 700 billion. We don't have the money to pay it. Once we pay out our basic Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, excuse me, 70% of our income in our federal government program goes out in what's called entitlement programs. We don't have enough money. We spend $750 billion a year in military defense. That's 10 times more than our next largest competitor, which is China, which is about $65 billion a year. Why are we spending 10 times more than our next largest contributor? Russia, they just brought their supersonic nuclear jet to Venezuela last week. That's a real situation over there. Reminds me of something that happened back in the 60s with a guy named Fidel Castro. When Russia tried to bring their missiles close here to our shore, they just flew their supersonic transport jet to Venezuela to make a point. If we think we're going to put rockets and defense shield around Europe, they're just telling us, think again. Because at the end, Russia only spends $50 billion a year on defense. We spend $750 billion. Why don't you stop and ask yourself, why are we spending 10 times more than the rest of the world, than any enemy we could possibly have? You know why? Because there's a handful of people that make a ton of money from defense. There's a handful of contractors out there that make hundreds and hundreds of millions from the money that we spend in our government on defense. Am I saying it's unnecessary? I didn't say that. I'm just saying, why do we spend 10 times more than our next closest competitor? Why? There's certain things about our government that I'm not going to go into. I'm not making this a political speech, but I'm talking about the haves and the have-nots. What happened to the middle class? The middle class is evaporating. I'm giving you some ideas why it's happening. And I'll go into more detail on my other podcasts. But my name is Glenn Chumley, and this is basically my introductory podcast on Your Vote Doesn't Matter Anyways. And if you really honestly think that we're going to make America great again and keeping everything the same way, think again. It's not going to happen. Something's got to change if we want different results. Insanity is doing the same crazy thing over and over and expecting different results. That's what's nuts. All the wealth accumulation in the last 30 years, 96% of it's gone to the top 1% of the people. Most people in the middle are getting poorer. People at the bottom, they really don't care. And I only say that because they get fed every day by social programs in our country. They get money, they get handouts. The people in the middle that bust their butt, the ones out there who are really breaking their ass every day, trying to get ahead and doing the honest and straight job, they're the ones getting bent over. They're the ones getting screwed. Because in this system that we have here today, the wealthy get wealthy, the poor get poorer, but the poor don't care because they've got, quote, social support. They get program money. But if you're an honest, hardworking guy, you're a cop, you're a teacher, and you're making 50, 60K, and between your households you're making $1, $1.25, and then at the end you pay for your own health care or a portion of it, and if they do give you health care, by the time you pay your deductibles, by the time you pay your co-pays, you know what I'm talking about here. You got barely anything left over. And then you got some young kids that you love dearly, that one day you want to see them maybe go to college and get a better education, maybe a better education than you even had, and then look at the cost of college tuition today. Yet we got a country where people can spend $500,000 to get them into a preferred college. You got the haves out there who are living their life because they don't play by the same set of rules. I'm just saying out loud to you, don't buy into the idea that we're going to bring jobs back to this country. We're not. We got to change the world from a different level, and that's what my podcasts are going to talk about with you. Thanks for listening, and thanks for giving me your ear. My name again is Glenn Chumley. The name of this podcast is very simply, Your Vote Doesn't Matter Anyways. Thank you.